Chapter 5. The year was destined to be chaotic. After the ambush of the Eastern Tartar envoys that shocked the court and the public as winter approached, another rumor about the commander of the Northern Yan army began to spread among high society like wildfire. The Marquis of Jingning, Fu Shen, was a cut slave. The timing of this rumor was suspicious, but upon further thought, everyone agreed there could be some truth behind it. People were always happy to employ vulgar speculations to fill any gaps in the truth. Very soon, every detail of Fu Shen's romantic history since the day he joined the army had spread feverishly throughout the homes of the noble class, serving for days as a favorite topic of dinner-time conversation. Relationships with men weren't particularly unusual for the men of the Zhou Empire, and people were typically tolerant of it. But when it came to a general with not inconsiderable military power, it became more than just a gentleman's hobby. The previous dynasty, Yue, had lasted for over 100 years. During that era, there was an emperor posthumously referred to as Suzhong, who became known for his grand passion. Before Suzhong ascended the throne, he had favored a maiden with the surname of Han. After his coronation, not only did he confer upon this beauty the title of honored consort, he also granted titles to her father, older brother, and her younger brother, a youth named Han Song. According to the tales, he had the delicate appearance of a beautiful woman, as refined as pearl and jade. This Han Song had entered the Luanyi Guard thanks to his sister's favor, and happened to ride as an escort on one of the emperor's outings. Suzhong fell in love with the lovely young man at first sight, and couldn't banish him from his mind even after returning to the palace. He brought Han Song into the inner palace and as a concubine, and in defiance of the customs and sensibilities of the time. In addition to showering him with favor, he created the title of honored male consort, equal in rank to the honored consort, so that the two siblings could serve the same emperor. The Yue dynasty had no precedent for such a thing. These events scandalized everyone, from the highest ministers to the lowest commoners. Both civil and military officials expressed grave concerns while privately wishing they could line up in front of the palace and kowtow to death in opposition. Suzhong was an unexpectedly romantic soul, but he was first and foremost an emperor, the ruler of a nation. He refused to tolerate a group of idlers criticizing his personal life. In a fit of pique, he rather resourcefully issued an imperial decree allowing all nobility and scholars to take male concubines. Officials of the 6th rank and above, as well as nobles and members of the royal family, could even marry men, who would hold a status equivalent to a legal wife. When something became fashionable with those at the top, the people below would follow. Once the precedent was set, while most officials didn't partake of these cut-sleeve marriages, many scholars praised them as a refined idea. Thus, the commoners followed suit, and the trend had flourished ever since. During the nearly 30 years of Suzong's reign, no minister was so foolish as to suggest the abolition of this decree. It wasn't until the previous dynasty began to wane that the reigning emperor at the time, Xuanzong, decided homosexuality defied the laws of nature and morality, given that it had resulted in a drop in the population, a sharp decline in numbers of eligible men, and even, among commoners, difficulties staffing the farms. He issued an edict to prohibit marriage between men among the common people, and ordered the male concubines to return to their family homes and re-register as members of the households of their birth. Duly wedded male wives, however, were not completely abolished. Xuanzang not only allowed them to preserve their legal status within their husband's family, but also issued a special decree. Officials above the sixth rank, nobles, and members of the royal family who wished to take a man as their legal wife could petition the emperor to grant them said marriage. In an unexpected turn, sorry, control is not working with me right now. In an unexpected turn, this decree named Xuanzang's This decree became Xuanzang's best weapon for keeping powerful ministers and nobles in check. For nobles with hereditary titles, taking a male wife meant there would be no legitimate heirs to inherit, and the title would thus be reclaimed by the court after death. The method was surprisingly effective, and consequently, emperors continued to wield this bloodless knife even after the fall of the dynasty that originated it. Since the founding of the Zhou Empire, more than a dozen ministers, all powerful and influential men, had been granted such a marriage by the emperor. The commander-in-chief of the Yan army, the Marquis of Jingning, the eldest son of the Duke of Ying, regardless of which mantle Fu Shen assumed, the one title he could never afford to wear was cut-sleeve. Numerous players had their eye on Fu Shen. The emperor, in particular, was increasingly concerned with wresting back his military authority. How could this rumor have begun to spread so conveniently at such a critical time? Since his return, Fu Shen had been shut away in his manor. He never engaged with his friends or relatives, so naturally these rumors had never reached his ears. His subordinates, who did go out in the city, had heard far too many unreliable rumors related to the Marquis of Jingning over the years, and were no longer fazed by them. Though had they possessed any political sense, they would never have allowed such rumors to spread so unscrupulously. So it was that, while the schemer was sharpening his knives, the man on the cutting board was completely unaware. However, the moment Yan Xiaohan, who was a keener sort, heard this rumor from the Feilong Guard, his heart dropped. He had an immediate feeling nothing good would come of it. He had gotten no real answers from Fu Shen the night he had gone to visit, but even a man as resilient as the general would waver in such circumstances. Although Yan Xiaohan had gained the upper hand, he was less than happy about it. The Yuan-Tai emperor had not assigned the investigation of the attack on the Eastern Tartar delegation to the Feilong Guard, so Yan Xiaohan could only look into it privately. Doubts had long since taken root in his heart. Although Fu Shen had insisted Yan Xiaohan thought too highly of him, he couldn't help feeling that the whole thing was strange. How could a man who could emerge unscathed from the battlefield be ambushed like that? It was like a duck drowning in a pond. Given Fu Shen's attitude, Yan Xiaohan suspected there was something more to this incident, in which case Yan Xiaohan needed the truth. This wasn't an issue of justice or morality. Rather, Yan Xiaohan wielded a demonic sword in the service of the emperor. He had to see the turbulent current beneath the water in order to control the direction of the blade and avoid being swept away by the undertow. The emperors of this dynasty attached great importance to the imperial guards. There were 10 guard divisions within the capital city, namely the Jinwu, Luanyi, Jumen, Shaoqi, and Baotao, each with the left and right branch. Together, they were dubbed the 10 guards of the southern court. 6 armies were also stationed within the palace. These being the left and right Yulin, Shenshu, and Shenwu, which were responsible for guarding the emperor, and were called the six armies of the northern court. On top of that, the prestigious Feilong Guard supervised all court officials and patrolled the city walls. Their chief officer, Yan Xiaohan, was a third-rank imperial inspector with the authority to report directly to the emperor. All the commanding generals of the northern court's armies made up the Feilong Guard, and as imperial inspector, Yan Xiaohan outranked them all, making him the northern court's de facto commander. The man who delivered the rumor in question was one Wei Shuzhou, the guard of the left Shenshu army. The Wei family was exceedingly large, with so many siblings, cousins, aunts, and uncles that they had family ties to almost every noble clan in the capital. General Wei was uniquely blessed by these family circumstances, since no other man in the northern court armies was more enthusiastic about matchmaking and spreading gossip. Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen's feud was well known within the Feilong Guard, and it was therefore with great relish that Wei Shuzhou shared the tale. Whoever started those rumors really knows how to shock people. Look at how noble the Marquis of Jingning usually is. I thought he would have to rely on his right hand to make it through the rest of his life. Yan Xiaohan frowned deeply. Where did you hear this? My second aunt's sister's husband's cousin is the wife of the Marquis of Liu En. General Wei obligingly answered. Her daughter is unwed and was interested in the Marquis of Jingning. I asked around on her behalf and discovered this man's remarkable secret. Yan Xiaohan kneaded his forehead, already exhausted from speaking to him. My lord, Wei Shuzhou ventured, pacing around him twice in a circle. The Marquis of Jingning has those kinds of proclivities, yet doesn't seem remotely concerned about it. Why do you care? It was strange, too strange. A man who'd been unlucky for several years suddenly became so cursed that he couldn't even take a sip of cold water without it making his teeth ache. What had Fu Shen done to anger the heavens? Why did all these evil spirits now join forces to plot against him? Something feels off, said Yan Xiaohan. Wei Xiong, please go investigate where this cut sleeve rumor started. But as he spoke, a young eunuch in blue strode in from the outer hall. He was the apprentice of the eunuch Tian Gonggong, the eunuch director of brush riding, who served the emperor directly. The two soldiers instantly stopped their conversation and stepped forward to greet him. With no preamble, the young eunuch announced, His Majesty summons Lord Yan to Yangxin Hall for an audience. Sensing that something monumentous was about to happen, Wei Shuzhou attempted to subtly shuffle away. Yan Xiaohan gestured at him from behind his back as he told the eunuch, Gonggong, please wait a moment. I have some official business to explain to General Wei. This is the Emperor's direct order, the young eunuch said coldly. Lord Yan, do you propose His Majesty wait on your convenience? A faint smile touched Yan Xiaohan's lips. It was the kind of expression he often used in his daily life, equal parts refined and murderous. As the Imperial Inspector of the Feilong Guard, every move I make is in accordance with the will of the Emperor, Gonggong. The Emperor, Gonggong, you put us in a difficult position. The eunuch had only been bluffing. When he saw that smile, he abruptly remembered the legends about the Feilong Guard's terrible commander. He immediately modulated his tone, barely holding on to his calm. He said, Since that's the case, Lord Yan, please do as you see fit. Yan Xiaohan dragged the confused general away to a nearby desk and picked up a few files for show. He lowered his voice to a murmur. Go to the Marquis of Jingning's manor for me. Inform him of the rumors. Tell Fu Shen to be careful and make whatever preparations he needs to. No matter what happens, we must not act rashly. Wei Shuzhou's gossip-loving heart stirred, but upon seeing the gravity of the Imperial Inspector's expression, he nodded. Don't worry, sir. Just leave it to me. And with that, for no matter how confidently Yan Xiaohan might speak, he really couldn't keep a eunuch delivering an imperial edict waiting. He was forced to put the matter aside and make haste to Yangxing Hall. The eunuch's master, Tian Tong, had always been at odds with the Feilong Guard. His young apprentice shared his hatred and refused to reveal any information about the summons. Not until Yan Xiaohan stepped over the threshold of Yangxin Hall did he discover that in addition to the Yuan-Tai Emperor, Crown Prince Sun Yunliang was also present. This subject pays his respects to your Majesty and your Highness. My dear subject, please rise. The Yuan-Tai Emperor was a tall and imposing man. The skin on his face sagged slightly, and two deep lines bracketed his nose, stretching down to his thin lips. A countenance suggested a harsh and authoritarian personality. This emperor was sharp and capable. He was usually serious, even stern, but at the moment he seemed in such a good mood that his mouth tugged toward a smile. He appeared greatly pacified. The anger and gloom from the envoy's case days prior seemed swept away. It didn't seem like the summons bode ill. Yan Xiaohan vented a quiet sigh of relief. All the strange incidents in close succession over the last few days must have put him on edge. The Crown Prince stood by with a stern, unmoving expression. Yan Xiaohan could feel his gaze on him. It wasn't malicious, but it had the keenness of a needle. It seemed the Yuan-Tai Emperor wanted to speak with Yan Xiaohan alone. He turned to the Crown Prince. You can return to the Eastern Palace, he said. After a moment's contemplation, he gave the prince rare words of affirmation. You did well today. The Crown Prince, having achieved his day's aim in receiving this compliment, made to leave. He stood looking at Yan Xiaohan, quite so sharp. He stopped looking at Yan Xiaohan quite so sharply, and even smiled as he bowed his farewells. That smile, which contained some indescribable mockery and pity, gave Yan Xiaohan a sudden ominous premonition. End Chapter 5. Chapter 6. While Lord Yan, who seemed destined to worry and struggle, was suffering in Yangxin Hall, the Marquis of Jingning, the object of his concern, was dealing with utter chaos in his manor. A few days ago, shortly after Fu Shen and his party had settled down, his younger sister, the Princess Consort of Qi, had sent a servant to pay respects and deliver gifts, along with a message that she would come to call on him herself another day. Fu Shen had no energy to deal with her. Moreover, he had to consider whether the Prince of Qi would take offense, seeing as the Marquis's manor wasn't his sister's true maiden home. He refused on the spot. No need. Please tell her to take care of herself and not to worry. These servants had been previously employed at the Duke of Ying's estate before being brought to the Prince of Qi's household as part of Fu Ling's dowry. They were familiar with their eldest young master's temper and didn't dare argue. Thus rebuffed, they simply returned to returned to their mistress and repeated his exact words. The Prince of Qi, Sun Yun Duan, happened to be present for this report. He shook his head. Marquis Fu does keep his distance. Since hearing about Fu Shen's injury, Fu Ling had been worried sick. She was unable to sleep for days and had spent several nights secretly weeping in her room. Yet, when she heard that familiar deadpan tone, even through the conduit of a messenger, she felt a mysterious sense of relief. Through gritted teeth, she answered, "Your Highness, you've witnessed something embarrassing. My brother is always like this, stubborn to a fault." She and Sun Yun Duan were a young and loving couple. He teased, "Aren't you speaking ill of him behind his back?" Fu Ling blushed. "My elder brother has a cold exterior but a warm heart. He's very good to me, but he's unyielding with his words. When he finally marries someday, I wonder what kind of sister-in-law will be worthy of him." Recalling the rumors his subordinates had reported, the prince deliberately changed the subject. "Who can speak with certainty when it comes to affairs of the heart? Marquis Fu has just returned to the capital, and the Marquis's manor must be very busy. It may simply be bad timing for a visit right now." He took Fu Ling's hand and swung it gently back and forth. "Wait a few days until he's settled. Then you can go visit him. What do you say?" Her eyes lit up. "Your Highness will allow me to leave the manor?" The Prince of Qi leaned in and kissed her cheek. He smiled softly. "Why not? He's your brother, not a stranger. But you have to promise me to take care. Don't risk—" Fu Ling's cheeks went pink, making her look even more radiant and bright. She ducked her head and whispered, "I know." The wind was more biting than usual, and the sky was overcast, as if it might rain. Fu Shen's injury was susceptible to this kind of weather, and the relentless ache in his legs made him irritable. He was about to call someone to push him into the study to look for books to divert his attention, when a servant reported the princess consort herself had come. The carriage was already at the door. Fu Shen felt a headache coming on. That little debt collector. "Help me up. Uncle Fu, tell Xiao Shun and the guards to stay back, and warn the servants in the backyard so they don't offend her. Please escort the princess consort to the main hall and find 2 maids to serve her. Let me change my attire." In the main hall, Fu Ling wasn't in the mood to drink tea. She twisted her handkerchief nervously. At last, she heard the sound of wheels from the inner room. Discarding propriety, she bolted to her feet, and just in time to meet her brother's eyes in the doorway. Fu Shen hadn't prepared for this. For a moment, he was visibly stunned. Fu Ling stared at him blankly, all words escaping her. The upright and invincible older brother from her memory seemed broken. His gaunt frame slouched miserably in a simple bamboo wheelchair. Even his eyebrows had thinned into a particular sharpness. He gave her an unpracticed smile. Unable to hold back any longer, Fu Ling threw herself at him and burst into tears. The maids who had accompanied her were all frightened to death. Fu Shen himself was thrown backwards by the force, but he still held her steadily in his arms. "Good heavens, be gentle. Little miss, do you still think you're only 7 years old?" Her strained heartstrings finally snapped. Fu Ling sobbed without restraint. "You scared me to death! Mother and father are gone! I have no family but you!" Fu Shen's breath hitched. The frost in his heart melted into a pool of warm water. He patted Fu Ling's shoulder with cautious, clumsy hands, and whispered, "Don't cry. All will be well. Your big brother is here. Don't be sad." If General Fu was a celestial general incarnate, then the Princess Consort of Qi must have been the reincarnation of a rain god. The Marquis of Jingning's manor was awash in her tears. By the time Fu Shen persuaded his sister to stop weeping, he was exhausted physically and mentally. He rubbed his temples. I told you not to visit, but you didn't listen. You insisted on coming here to cry. This can't be good for your health. Thanks to you, our mansion's gardens won't need to be watered for 3 years. Fu Ling had washed her face with hot water and was now reapplying her makeup. She burst out laughing and complained, "Stop making fun of me! It's not as if I intended to. It's more harmful to my health to sit at home fretting all day." Fu Shen, stymied by her words, dropped his head in dismay. Fu Ling finished tidying up her appearance and sat back down next to Fu Shen. Seeing his legs covered with a thin blanket, she couldn't help but knit her brows again in worry. "Daga, your injury. Is there really nothing to be done? There are many famous doctors in the capital. I can ask the prince for help." "The emperor has already sent someone to examine me." She fell silent. A look of disappointment flashed across her face, but after a moment she forced a smile and reassured herself. "Well, it doesn't matter if your legs can't be healed. It doesn't matter at all, as long as you're alive. Stay in the capital from now on, and don't go running off, all right?" Her earnest gaze was a knife to Fu Shen's heart. He didn't want to lie to Fu Ling, but nor could he bear to make her sad. He settled for a vague hum. Fu Ling could finally smile from the bottom of her heart. She chatted with him about this and that, then asked, "By the way, has the family sent anyone to visit?" If she hadn't mentioned it, Fu Shen would never have thought of the residence of the Duke of Ying's estate, and in response he only sneered. At that, Fu Ling lost her patience. "Even if she doesn't like us, she's still the mistress of the house. I thought she'd at least be courteous for the sake of her reputation. How can she be so heartless? What bond lies between us? It was cleanly severed when we split the titles and estates. You don't always have to bend just because she's your elder. That woman only has eyes for Fu Ya. Heavens knows when her precious son will lay a golden egg for her." This time Fu Ling's laughter echoed the secret thoughts of all the servants from the Duke of Ying's manor. But Fu Shen couldn't be bothered to dwell on these trivial matters. "Why bring those people up at all? How about you? How are you and the prince?" "I'm quite well. The prince is very good to me." Fu Ling turned away slightly, pulled at his sleeve, and shook it like a little girl. She whispered, "I was actually hoping you'd return to the capital this year." "What's wrong?" Fu Shen asked at once. "Did something happen? Are you being mistreated at home?" It couldn't be helped that this was his first thought. Such was the nature of big brothers the world over. The way they showed affection was to stand up for their siblings. "None of those. It's good news." Fu Ling flushed slightly. "Daga, you're going to be an uncle." "Oh." Fu Shen nodded, only having registered the first half of the sentence. After a few breaths, he registered the second. He was so shocked he almost stood up from the wheelchair, blurting out at great volumes, "What did you say?" Fu Ling placed her hands on her still flat belly. Smiling, she said, "About 3 months." "Oh, what?" The Marquis of Jingning rarely lost his composure, but at last it had happened. "At your age? No, when did you—" Fu Ling smiled at him as he floundered. Realizing he was asking nonsense, he smacked his forehead and returned her smile. "Goodness, that's great, wonderful." Fu Shen didn't consider himself a good older brother. His mother had died early, his stepmother was unkind, and he had left for the battlefield at a young age. It had been difficult for him to visit home even once a year, let alone care for his younger sister as she deserved. The siblings were connected by more connected more by blood than affection, and for years they had found little to say to each other. But while Fu Ling was soft on the outside, she had inner strength. Even under Lady Jean, she had grown up to be a distinguished noble lady. The only time she had ever come to Fu Shen for help was when the crown prince informed the Fu family he intended to take her as his princess consort. At that moment, Fu Shen had truly realized for the first time he was an older brother. He had wiped Fu Ling's tears and told her, "If you don't like him, then don't marry him. Don't be afraid. I'll protect you no matter what." Even now, when he looked at Fu Ling, he saw her as a crybaby and delicate little girl. She never directly said what she was thinking. She would always reach out and tug his sleeve first. Yet in the blink of an eye, the little girl became a wife, and in another blink had become a mother. The moment he heard she was expecting, Fu Shen didn't dare keep her in the manor a second longer. The day inevitably came when even the greatest skeptic became superstitious. He who had long dismissed the supernatural now worried that he and his manor full of soldiers fresh from the battlefield were too bloody and would be bad for the child. He practically drove Fu Ling over the threshold where a maid helped her into the carriage. Fu Shen solemnly told her through the window, "Take care of yourself. I'll stay in the capital for now. Rest assured, I'm not going anywhere. You must think of your child. Don't do anything that would put you at risk." Fu Ling nearly started crying all over again. Holding back her tears, she said, "What is my brother saying? Who dares to wrong me?" Fu Shen hummed softly. "I'm here to protect you, no matter what. Go on now." The door to the Marquis's manor was closed again. Uncle Fu wheeled Fu Shen back to his room. Halfway there, Fu Shen said, "Go to the storehouse and collect some nourishing herbs and a few bolts of silk. Send someone to deliver them to the Prince of Chi's estate in a day or two." "A gift for the young lady?" Uncle Fu asked. Shall we add something for the prince as well? The Prince of Chi has sent quite a few gifts since your return." "There's a Venus dragon tail inkstone in the study. I'll go get it later. Perhaps we can think of a few more things to add." The study had been sealed so long that the old steward was afraid dust had collected inside, so he ordered someone to tidy the place before the master entered. He could never have expected the incident this bit of housekeeping would cause. When Fu Shen at last went in to look for the inkstone, he chanced upon an unfamiliar box on the large rosewood desk. He was certain it wasn't his, yet it was placed neatly in the middle, as if someone had left it deliberately for him to find. The wooden box was long and thin and very light, and when Fu Shen gave it an unexpected shake, it rattled as if there was a thin stick inside. Fu Shen exercised the utmost caution as he turned it over and over in his hands. After ensuring there were no hidden mechanisms that could be triggered, he carefully opened the lid. The moment he saw what was in the box, his hand froze in midair, his gaze fixed on the object inside. A broken black crossbow bolt. The shaft was nearly splintered, and the arrowhead was curled at the tip, as if it had struck something hard. In contrast to the box, this arrow was so familiar it was frightening. No one else in the world knew it better than Fu Shen. On the 9th day of the 9th month, at Qingsha Gorge, amid a downpour of loose stone, this crossbow bolt had come within a hair's breadth of killing him. End chapter 6. Chapter 7. Fu Shen's heart pounded, and his ears rang. Glimpsing the bolt dragged him back at once to that nightmarish day. The boulder crashed down from above. His crushed legs burned with phantom pain, the nauseating agony of shattering bone that made his vision go dark. He curled over his legs and braced himself, a subconscious action of self-preservation. Beads of sweat as big as fingernails raked down his temples and past his hollowed cheeks. The veins under his pale skin looked ready to burst out of his body. The box was solid wood, but it couldn't withstand his grip. It split with a crack, the splinters piercing his palm. Yet this sharp pain was like a golden needle. It penetrated the fog of his panic, piercing through the hazy layers of memory and stabilizing his trembling soul. His scattered mind reassembled, and he quickly escaped the overwhelming nightmare. Fushen raised his head, cold sweat sheening his face. He'd shed no tears, but his eyes were red and bloodshot. His thick eyelashes drooped like black feathers, the somber expression of a trapped beast. His gaze shifted to the cracked wooden box. A sliver of something was visible through the broken edge. There was something else inside. Fushen carefully tugged out a folded piece of paper. A little over an hour later, Xiao Xun, standing guard at the door, heard Fushen calling from within the room. He pushed the door open and frowned. It smelled like the scent of burnt paper. "My lord?" Fushen sat before his desk, his face calm and composed, though perhaps a little colder than usual. He was fiddling with a long wooden box in his hands. The box bore a faint blood stain from an injury on his palm, but the Marquis didn't seem to be in any pain. He said calmly, "Who in the manor has entered the study in the past 3 days? Summon them." Xiao Xun wanted to tell him to bandage his palm first, but Fushen never looked up from the box in his hands. Xiao Xun didn't dare disobey, and hurriedly bowed. Just as he turned to leave, Fushen called, "Wait." "Sir?" Fushen thought for a moment. "Bring the guards as well." After the events of Qingsha Gorge, the first thing Fushen had done was, when he woke on his sick bed, was order his men to find the bolt that had struck the rock. Though the search was futile, he had assumed it was because the arrow was long buried beneath the avalanche. He hadn't expected that someone had gotten there first. Whoever had carried out the assassination left no traces. This wooden box was their first real lead. Until now, his subordinates had been running around like headless flies. But who had the ability to deliver such a key piece of evidence to him without anyone noticing? And what were their intentions in doing so? Soon after, servants of varying heights and age lined up before him, heads lowered, all wishing they could dig a hole and bury themselves. A group of murderous Northern Yan cavalrymen stood outside the room, looking ready and willing to burst in and cut their enemies down. Fushen's voice was hoarse. He sounded strangely weary. He tossed the box onto the desk and asked directly, "Who has seen this box? When did it appear in the study? Who left it here?" The servants came forward in order of entry, trying to identify it. Upon examining it, most shook their heads and said they didn't know. The servants who had been sent to clean the study that morning said they vaguely remembered such a box. They'd taken it for one of Fushen's personal belongings and hadn't dared touch it. Finally, everyone's eyes caught to a boy who had delivered a vase of flowers to the study the day before. He was the youngest of them, only 13 or 14, and dressed in drab gray. His parents had passed away early, so he had followed his grandfather to work in the Marquis's manor. He usually stayed hidden away in the kitchens, and has never witnessed such a scene. When Fushen's frosty gaze swept over him, he panicked and dropped to his knees. Crying and kowtowing, he sobbed, "Master, please spare my life!" Fushen rubbed at the spot between his brows. His head ached from all the crying. "Shut up!" His voice was quiet, but perhaps because he was used to giving orders, each word was heavy, leaving a crater where it landed. The child was instantly silenced, but he shook even more violently. Fushen asked, "Did you put this box here?" "No." "Then who did?" The servant doesn't know." "I don't have the patience to watch this display," Fushen said darkly. "The sooner you tell me, the better. I'll give you one more chance. Think before you speak." The servant bit his lower lip, his fingers worrying at the hem of his jacket. After a moment he couldn't endure the pressure and murmured, "I'm really not sure, but it could be Wongo-R." Fushen was baffled. "Who?" "It's a kid from the Wong family, over by the poplar grove on the east side of the city. He usually comes with his father to deliver vegetables to the manor. Yesterday, Grandpa Fu told me to deliver the vase to the study, and Wang Gao-R said he wanted to see what a rich family's study looked like. I thought the Marquis never comes in here anyways, so I brought him along." "Xiaoxun," Fushen said. "Understood." An outsider had trespassed into the study of the Marquis's manor. Although there was no confidential documents in the study, the guards had still made an enormous error. Xiaoxun immediately took 2 of the guards to track down this Wang Gao-R. Fushen slowly took in the line of servants before him and scoffed. "It seems I've been negligent all these years. I thought this little patch of land didn't have enough value for people to set fire to it. But betrayal never comes from an enemy. The hole in the ship was bigger than the plug. Today's incident is a lesson for me as well as all of you. Uncle Fu." The steward anxiously stepped forward. "Awaiting the Marquis's orders?" Before the week is out, dismiss all the servants in the mansion. Send them back wherever they came from. The manor will be governed by the Northern Yan Army. Outsiders are not permitted to loiter here. That's it. Dismissed." The crowd of servants all sank to the ground and kowtowed at once. "Marquis, please have mercy. Please give us a chance." "Don't make me repeat myself." Fushen waved a hand. "Xiaoding, see that it's done." A guard stepped up, hoisting the steward by the back of his collar, and carried him out. It was a foregone conclusion after that. The rest of the servants were like quails strung together on a rope, and tucked in their necks as they followed him out in a single file. Fushen had dealt with the rotten mess swiftly, but it did nothing to ease the weight on his chest. He was exhausted, body and mind, and so frustrated he was tempted to close his eyes and let death take him. The thought had barely occurred before a rapid knock sounded on the door outside. "Marquis, someone from the Imperial Army is outside. He said someone asked him to pass a message to you." The wooden box had thrown Fushen into a state of uncertainty, and he was particularly sensitive to the words Imperial Army. He immediately responded, "Let him in." Wei Shuzhou received stares the entire way through the manor. All the guards were soldiers fresh from the battlefield, and having to admit that a pampered Imperial Army general set their teeth on edge. When he laid eyes on Fushen in his wheelchair, General Wei felt a swell of unexpected sympathy for the man. "Commanding General of the left Shenshu Army, Wei Shuzhou greets the Marquis." By now, Fushen was operating on the assumption that everyone was suspicious, but the northern court armies were under Yan Xiaohan's control, and thus didn't overly concern him. Strangely, though Fushen and Yan Xiaohan were complete opposites in their approach to dealing with others, they had a candid relationship with each other. The man was a notorious court lackey, but Fushen trusted him enough to face his subordinate Wei Shuzhou with equanimity. "No need to be so polite, General Wei. Please take a seat." To the guard, he called, "Bring tea." Wei Shuzhou was wary of spending too much time here, afraid amid the swirling rumors that others would scrutinize their relationship, and so he got straight to the point. "My lord, please don't trouble yourself. I'll leave as soon as I relay my message. Our Imperial Inspector was summoned by His Majesty just now. Before answering, he bade me tell you that recently there have been rumors that you secretly well, favor men. This matter should not be taken lightly, he says, and the Marquis must deal with it as soon as possible. This news struck Fu Shen like a bolt of lightning, knocking him numb from head to toe as if the heavens had opened deliberately to smite him. What did you say? My lord also said that, no matter what happens, the Marquis should be patient and not act rashly. Huh? Wei Shuzhou replied blithely. That's it. That's the end. There were too many hazards, each one as impassable as a boulder, hurtling toward him so fast he could scarcely catch his breath. Countless thoughts and suspicions swirled in his mind, demons threatening to possess him. No matter what happened, he couldn't act rashly. The crossbow bolt in the box, the concealed paper, the boy, Wang Gao-er, who had smuggled it all into the study. Was Yan Xiaohan referring to one of these? Did he know of some hidden conspiracy that Fu Shen had yet to uncover? Was Yan Xiaohan clairvoyant, or did he have sinister plans of his own? Marquis! Marquis! He was still caught in this trance when the old steward rushed into the study, panting, and interrupted Fu Shen's conspiratorial frenzy. Fu Shen pulled himself clear of his inner demons and realized his paranoid thoughts had gone too far. What is it? An imperial decree! Uncle Fu exclaimed. An imperial edict has arrived at our door. Gong Gong requests that you receive the decree. Wei Shuzhou, his instincts sharp as ever, immediately stood and said, Since the Marquis has other matters to attend to, I will take my leave. Fu Shen met his gaze and nodded knowingly. Uncle Fu, send the commander out through the corner gate. I will change into my official's robes to meet the imperial envoy. In Yangxin Hall, as soon as the crown prince left, the Yuan Tai emperor addressed Yan Xiaohan by his courtesy name, Mongui. Yan Xiaohan was briefly stunned by this change in tone, but responded respectfully, Your Majesty. Lately we have been startling awake late at night. At times we are sleeping alone, but it feels like the bed is cramped, as if someone is sleeping beside us. What do you think this signifies? Although Yan Xiaohan was a military officer, he had still read a few books. At this question, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Mind racing, he dropped to his knees. Your Majesty is a true dragon, the son of heaven, invulnerable to malign spirits. This must be the work of a treacherous evildoer behind the scenes. We have failed to protect you as your imperial guards, causing unrest in the palace and making the emperor worry. I deserve to be punished with death. He pled guilty very readily. Too readily, perhaps. The Yuan Tai emperor had not intended to rouse this reaction. He couldn't tell if Yan Xiaohan was truly dense or simply play-acting. He clarified. Within the capital there are northern and southern imperial guards, the imperial city wardens, and the 5 major military camps. Nearly 300,000 soldiers all told. Yet we still feel helpless and surrounded by looming threats. Sometimes we wonder, is the Zhou Empire, the Sun family's empire, really in our own hands, or is it controlled by others? The situation at this point was too serious for Yan Xiaohan to play the fool any longer. Your Majesty, please help your subject understand. Do you remember what we said when we made an exception and promoted you as Imperial Inspector of the Feilong Guard? The Feilong Guard's predecessor had been the Imperial Feilong Stables. It was originally a horse breeding ground in the palace, managed by eunuchs. During the reign of the Chunhua Emperor, the third ruler of the Zhou Empire, the power of the civil officials had strengthened to the point that they controlled the imperial guard and threatened the power of the emperor himself. In order to break the deadlock, the Chunhua Emperor renamed the imperial Feilong stables the Feilong Guard and retook control of the northern court armies through the hands of his eunuchs. The Feilong Guard was filled with the emperor's confidants and held immense power. Only the sovereign's inner circle could enter their ranks. Since those early days, the northern court armies had been controlled by the eunuchs. This didn't change until the 20th year of Yuan Tai, when the former Feilong Guard Imperial Inspector Duan Linglong passed away. At that point, the Yuan Tai Emperor broke precedent and promoted the general of the left Shenwu Guard, Yan Xiaohan, to fill the role. The exact reason why Yan Xiaohan was lifted to such a powerful position remained a mystery, but it was undeniable that the Yuan Tai Emperor particularly relied on him. Yan Xiaohan had perfectly isolated himself in his position over the years. He was unmoved by favors or bribes, holding himself separate from the rest of the court, and under his direction, the Feilong Guard became the sharpest blade in the emperor's hand. We will appoint you as the imperial inspector of the Feilong Guard, the emperor had pronounced. You will walk the empire in my stead and supervise all government dependent departments. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, wherever you go, wherever your sword points, each holds the same authority as if we stood there ourselves. Kneeling now in Yangxin Hall, Yan Xiaohan said, "Your Majesty's expectations back then are engraved in my heart. I will remember them until I die. You have not wasted the trust we placed in you these past years." The Yuan Tai Emperor straightened and said seriously, "We have a task for you. It may take 2 or 3 years, or even longer, but if you succeed, we will finally be at ease." The Emperor cleared his throat. "We are going to bestow a marriage between you and Fu Shen." End chapter 7. Chapter 8. Yan Xiaohan's heart stuttered in his chest. He stared at the Yuan Tai Emperor in shock and abruptly forgot his manners. "Your Majesty?" Hell and damnation! This was ludicrous. He and Fu Shen had been at each other's throats during morning court as little as 3 months ago. The whole capital knew the two detested each other, so how on earth could the Emperor suddenly want to pair them up? "We have grave concerns about how deeply the Fu family has rooted itself at our northern border." The words were like a bucket of cold water, instantly shocking Yan Xiaohan back to his senses. The series of events leading to this arranged marriage connected at once in his mind. No wonder there were rumors in the capital. No wonder the Crown Prince had given him that smirk just now. These were all pieces of a larger plan. It seemed that the Emperor's fear of the Fu family had been growing for a long time. So then had Fu Shen's attempted assassination and return to the capital also been part of this plot? No, he decided. The pattern broke there. The purpose of an assassination was to kill the target. It had been sheer luck that Fu Shen was merely grievously injured. The uncertainty of a marriage match was too high, and the control it offered over Fu Shen was too minimal. It was obviously a spur-of-the-moment decision, but he could not rule out the possibility that the first failed plan had paved way for this one. The key question was, who had spread the rumor that Fu Shen was a cut sleeve? Just now, the Crown Prince made a suggestion to us. It's said there are rumors of Fu Shen having peculiar inclinations. We can use this marriage to completely sever the connection between the Northern Yan army and the Fu family. What deep grudge did Crown Prince Sun Yunliang bear Fu Shen? It took a moment for Yan Xiaohan to recall. At once, the Crown Prince had wanted Fu Shen's sister as his princess consort. It had been at Fu Shen's insistence that the family rejected the Crown Prince's overtures. Yan Xiaohan had reported this matter to the Yuan-Tai Emperor himself, so his sovereign should understand the ulterior motives behind the Crown Prince's current actions. Yet in the Emperor's eyes, that might all pale in comparison to the prospect of holding Fu Shen hostage. The Yuan-Tai Emperor then redirected his thoughts. The Crown Prince's plan was certainly feasible, but the question was, who would we appoint commander of the Northern Yan Army after Fu Shen steps down? The Crown Prince recommended Yang Xijing. He shook his head, resigned, but his voice had a laugh in it when he said, "The prince is young, after all, and hasn't considered things deeply." Yan Xiaohan could hardly hold in his angry laugh at this exquisite father-son pair. Yang Xijing was the son of Empress Yang's brother, so a cousin of the Crown Prince. Thanks to the Empress's favor, Yang Xijing had been granted the third-rank title of General of the Right Jumen Guard. No matter how far Fu Shen had fallen, he was still the Duke of Ying's eldest son, a first-rank official of the imperial court, and had earned the title of Marquis of Jingning with his achievements on the battlefield. Who the hell was Yang Xijing but an indolent young man who had only gotten promoted through nepotism? Did the prince imagine the 200,000 cavalrymen of the Northern Army were blind? The crown prince of a nation had somehow come up with such a despicable plan to harm meritorious officials for family gain. How could it not be dreadful to think such a person would be emperor in the future? "We don't want the Fu family to become too powerful," the Yuan-Tai Emperor continued smoothly. "But we also don't want to destroy the Great Wall that is our border garrison ourselves. The Northern Yan Cavalry is the northern defense line of the Zhou Empire. The Tartar threat has yet to be resolved. If we rashly replace a frontier general, it may destroy the morale of the army. This must be a careful move. After some consideration, we thought you have lived in the capital for a long time. Perhaps it's time for you to see more of the world." Lord Yan, who had just been secretly mocking Yang Xijing, suddenly found himself thrust into the same position. It couldn't be helped that the emperor's eyes fell on him. To the young imperial inspector of the Zhou Empire, the men his age with lower official positions all amounted to nothing. He knelt and immediately pled guilty again. "This subject has neither talent nor virtue, and dares not accept your majesty's kindness. Please reconsider." "Are you unwilling?" "Please forgive me, your majesty." "Mengui." The Yuan-Tai Emperor's countenance darkened. "We remember you told us that you didn't favor women, and we promised to find a satisfactory match for you. Since Fu Shen has the same predilections as you, and his family background, talent, and face are without fault, what holds you back from accepting?" Cold sweat trickled down Yan Xiaohan's spine. He was about to close his eyes and spin a tale about some other great love he had to fool the emperor when the Yuan-Tai Emperor tossed a bright yellow imperial edict down in front of him. The jade shaft struck the blue brick floor, breaking the finial at the end in half. Tiny jade chips landed on Yan Xiaohan's sleeve. "Take a look," the emperor said. Yan Xiaohan slowly unrolled the imperial edict. "Under the mandate of heaven, the emperor proclaims, Defender General of the State, Marquis of Jingning, Fu Shen, the descendant of the Duke of Ying, Fu Jian, has served the government for 6 years and made outstanding contributions. He has struck fear in the hearts of our enemies and served the country loyally. We regard him as our right hand and favor him greatly. Commanding General of the Left Shenwu Guard, Imperial Inspector of the Feilong Guard, Yan Xiaohan is the descendant of a noble household. He is loyal and upright, possessed of great virtue and grace, handsome and capable, skilled in both literary and military arts. We regard him highly." These subjects are a perfect complement for each other. We decree that the two are to be married on the soonest auspicious date. We exhort them to work together in mind and spirit, to serve the country with all their sincerity, and not to disappoint our expectations. Thus it is decreed. We have already dispatched servants to the Marquis of Jingning's manor to make the declaration. The emperor watched Yan Xiaohan coolly. If you have thought the matter through, accept this imperial edict, and go. The implication was, of course, that if he still had thinking to do, he could kneel there until he died. Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen. One a famous general, one a court sycophant. One was upright, one was hypocritical. One held the world's interests in his heart, one worked tirelessly for worldly gains. One was renowned, one was notorious. Two men on different paths, forced together by an absurd arranged marriage. Even more ridiculous than the imperial decree granting his marriage was that Yan Xiaohan's first reaction upon seeing it wasn't anger, but a cold delight. He wondered, maliciously, what Fu Shen's reaction would be when he received this decree. That pillar of the court, that bastion of duty and morality, working diligently and devotedly for the throne, had been ground into the mud by the very sovereign he swore loyalty to. Could he continue calmly holding the world in his heart? Would he swallow his anger and accept this imperial edict, or would he flee the capital and raise the northern Yan's army's banners in rebellion? While Lord Yan's head was in the clouds, the chief eunuch, Tian Gongong, tiptoed up to the emperor and whispered in his ear. The Yuan Tai emperor had already been fuming at Yan Xiaohan's audacity, but after he heard Tian Gongong's report, his countenance was so stormy one could almost hear the rumbles of thunder. Through gritted teeth he said, "Repeat what you just said to our dear subject Yan." Tian Gongong cautiously advanced and repeated his script. The Marquis of Jingning has refused to accept the edict. He is even now kneeling outside the palace gates, requesting an audience with the emperor. Tian Tong, the Yuan Tai emperor said, a dangerous edge to his tone. How is the weather outside? The Marquis of Jingning is not in good health. You must not let him freeze. Tian Gongong understood at once. Your Majesty, it is raining. The earlier drizzle has turned into a downpour. The Marquis of Jingning has been waiting outside for an hour. Should this elderly servant bring him an umbrella? The hall was indeed perfumed with the faint, earthly scent of petrichor. Yan Xiaohan's knees ached already from kneeling on the floor tiles. It required no great leap of imagination to guess that Fu Shen's pain from kneeling on the wet stone would be 100 times greater than this. In addition to this agony, his heart was likely growing colder than the autumn rain. Yan Xiaohan finally understood the scope of the emperor's plan. From the very beginning, he had no intention of considering Yan Xiaohan's opinion on the matter. His inquiry was the merest pretense, and, in his eyes, Yan Xiaohan had no right to refuse. But what the Yuan Tai emperor truly wanted him to agree to wasn't this ridiculous marriage. Rather, he wished for Yan Xiaohan to siphon away the power of the northern Yan cavalry from Fu Shen, drop by drop. Yan Xiaohan was currently a third-rank official, while the commander-in-chief of the northern Yan army was a military official of the first rank. If Yan Xiaohan could attain this position, a lifetime of riches would await him overnight. Moreover, with the emperor's support behind him, how difficult could it be to oust one disabled commander? It was a good bargain any way one looked at it. Only, accepting it meant that Fu Shen's old past now lay ahead of Yan Xiaohan instead, painting his golden future red with blood. Time slowed to a crawl. At some point, the western clock on the side hall struck the hour, breaking the silence in the hall. The Yuan Tai emperor was growing impatient. He was about to take more extreme measures when Yan Xiaohan spoke. There is one thing I don't understand. I beg your Majesty to enlighten me. Speak. The Fu family has been loyal for generations. Fu Shen has steadfastly guarded the border for many years. Moreover, His legs are ruined. Granting him a marriage at this moment will not only garner criticism from court officials, but will also make Fu Shen seem a martyr. This subject is dull-witted. Why does your Majesty insist on this timing? His question seemed to indicate that he was wavering. The Yuan-Tai Emperor secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fu Shen is indeed loyal, but he is not loyal to us. A nation's generals are divine weapons in the hands of the Emperor. Fu Shen is a sharp weapon indeed, but if a blade has too many ideas of its own, it becomes worrisome. When it comes to ministers, some are loyal to the Emperor, and some are loyal to the world. Fu Shen is much like his uncle Fu Tingxin, a minister who is loyal to the world. He is a sword that will inevitably be turned on its master. Tell me, how can we be at ease in passing this weapon down to future generations? Do not forget, although the Northern Young Cavalry is stationed at the border, it is only 1,000 li from the capital. Yansho Han cursed Fu Shen in his heart. That idiot must have done something truly thankless to have offended the Emperor. His Northern Yan army was impeccably disciplined. Even for the Phalanx Guard, digging any information out of them was as impossible as reaching for the moon. If he had known earlier what grave sin Fu Shen had committed, he could have prepared some countermeasures and wouldn't be on his knees now, caught utterly off guard by the Emperor and Crown Prince. Mengui, you have been by our side a long time as our most useful right hand. You are different from Fu Shen. Only take this step, and your future will be limitless. The Emperor paused meaningfully. But if you insist on resisting, we will give you a choice. Yansho Han looked up at his sovereign, sitting high above him on the throne. The divine words of the Emperor, frosty and laced with murderous intent, rolled down the golden steps toward him, inexorable. Either you accept this decree to marry Fu Shen, or you eliminate Fu Shen for us. Times had changed. A good general was a blessing in wartime, and a danger in peacetime. The Emperor was now wary of Fu Shen that the Emperor was now so wary of Fu Shen that he was determined to dispose of him entirely. Yansho Han picked up the imperial edict with its shattered corner and rolled it back up. He had been kneeling all this while, but now he bent forward and prostrated himself. This subject thanks His Majesty. A thin bar of sunlight streamed into the hall and fell upon the plaque hanging above them, illuminating the words there. Righteousness and harmony. The rain had built itself into a proper autumn storm. Water puddled outside the palace gates, and yellow leaves scattered across the stones. Fu Shen's red robes, soaked by water, were even more eye-catching amid such a dim and dreary scene. Yansho Han approached that ruler straight back. Fu Shen's gaze was fixed on the palace. He looked down his nose and said icily, His Majesty won't see you. Don't waste your time. Go home. Fu Shen didn't raise his head, only looked up as far as Yansho Han's legs. Yet his attitude on his knees was still more arrogant than the man looming over him. The Emperor asked you to come? This matter is set in stone. Further discussion is pointless. Don't ask any more. You agreed to it. Yansho Han suddenly flew into a rage, the pent-up fury from the palace boiling over and onto Fu Shen. Yes, or else what? Everything I have today, power, status, all of it was granted by the Emperor. What right do I have to refuse? He grasped a handful of Fu Shen's collar. You dare ask me this? Aren't you so noble and upright? Devoted to your country and loyal to His Majesty? Thunder and rain are also gifts from the heavens. Why are you scurrying to the palace gates and kneeling to beg His Majesty to withdraw his decree? Shouldn't you happily accept it and thank the Emperor? Well, who are you to put on this show for? The rain lashed down. Yansho Han bent closer to Fu Shen, close enough to brush his cheek. his skin cold from the rain. His frustrated roar caught in his throat as if he was afraid to be heard and was drowned out by the torrential rain. Only Fu Shen's ears caught it. "You are the great commander-in-chief of the Northern Yan Army. Why are you suffering such injustice here? Why don't you rebel?" Fu Shen blinked away the raindrops on his lashes, and all at once he smiled. All this resentful helplessness, frustration, pathos, indifference, and deeply subsumed torment were contained in that expression. Yan Xiaohan yanked back his hand, as if that smile burned him. Fu Shen closed his eyes, his skin nearly translucent after so long in the freezing rain. Water droplets rolled down his temples and past the corners of his eyes, leaving behind shimmering trails. His gaunt jawline and neck possessed a harrowing fragility. Actually, I knew it would be useless even if I broke my legs again kneeling here, but it is still hard to accept. Do I owe you another favor? I apologize. But Lord Yan, there are things a gentleman should and should not do. The Northern Yan cavalry has defended the country loyally. How can I let decades worth of honorable service turn into an eternity of infamy because of my own selfishness? I may not be a gentleman, but I will not consign myself to be a sinner. Dark clouds hung low and heavy as the wind and rain rent the air, casting a pall over the landscape. Today's disgrace will be repaid tomorrow, Fu Shen finished. Yan Xiaohan was speechless. He used to think he understood Fu Shen, and so he looked down on the general's naive dedication. Only now did he realize there was far more to Fu Shen than he knew, and that he could not dismiss Fu Shen's steadfast resolve out of hand. He sighed, his rage completely extinguished. Yan Xiaohan reached out, intending to help Fu Shen up, but it was pointless for him to stay here getting drenched in the rain. But before his fingers brushed him, Fu Shen slumped forward without warning. Fortunately, Yan Xiaohan's reactions were quick. Fu Shen fell into his arms. End chapter 8. Chapter 9. Fu Shen! He could hear muffled cries. Though his body had gone numb, he still clung to consciousness. The hiss of rain followed him like a shadow. Someone was picking him up, their touch somehow familiar. It was like the warm embrace that had enfolded him when he tumbled to the ground a few days since, or like the gentle hands that had patted his back a very long time ago. Indeed. Who was it again? He was placed somewhere narrow and dry, forced to leave the warmth of that soft yet sturdy embrace. He hadn't had enough time to savor it yet. Suddenly frustrated, he reached out and grabbed that man's collar, fiercely yanking him forward. Bang! Before he could straighten up, Lord Yan was dragged back atop Fu Shen on the wooden carriage bench, pinning the Marquis of Jingning beneath him in a scandalous position. Fu Shen finally woke up from his faint. Eyes met eyes. Yan Xiaohan hadn't expected this sickly man would transform into a living corpse the moments after fainting. But before his temper could flare, he registered Fu Shen's gaze. There were still raindrops on his lashes, and his eyes were hazy, as if he was about to cry. Although he knew that couldn't possibly be the case, Lord Yan still sucked in a calming breath, stood up, and took a decorous seat. In a low voice, he said, "Let's go to my manor, and have Shen Yise come to check your injuries before anything else. Is that all right?" I hate that name, Yise. He was concerned about Fu Shen's injuries. It was a serious thing to make a man with ruined legs kneel on stone for 2 hours. Whether Fu Shen heard or not was hard to tell, as he only made a vague humming sound. He half closed his eyes, seemingly without strength to even speak, and slumped bonelessly against the wall of the carriage as they set out for the Yan residence. Though the roads in the capital were flat, Fu Shen was jostled left and right with the swaying of the carriage. Yan Xiaohan watched him intently for a long time. At last, he tentatively reached a hand toward Fu Shen. Sure enough, before he got anywhere close, the man who had closed his eyes and pretended to sleep moved lightning fast to grab his wrist. "What are you doing?" "Are you uncomfortable anywhere?" A trace of confusion flashed across Fu Shen's features. "I'm uncomfortable everywhere. Why?" His fingers were ice cold, but his palms were startlingly warm. Yan Xiaohan sighed and twisted his wrist to break free of that grip, and then gently rested his hand on Fu Shen's forehead. "You have a fever." Fu Shen's brow was hot enough to burn him. The patient himself didn't feel anything, so he raised his own hand to touch. "It's not hot. That was my hand you were feeling." Leaning his head against the wall of the carriage, Fu Shen turned with difficulty and looked at Yan Xiaohan sidelong. "It's nothing. I'll be fine once I go back and get some sleep." However, between the palace and the Yan residence, his unhealed injuries and the chill from the rain all flared up at once. Illness, coupled with mental overexertion and plain exhaustion, dragged Fu Shen into a feverish delirium. By the time they arrived, he was completely unconscious and couldn't be roused no matter how they tried. Yan Xiaohan had no choice but to carry him inside. The servants all looked straight ahead and dared not breathe. Yan Xiaohan was a strict master, and the servants in his manor were much more skillful than the old, weak, and sickly remnants in the Marquis's residence. In the blink of an eye, the bathtub was ready with hot water, with clothes and the blankets prepared for the two of them to bathe. Yan Xiaohan didn't trust anyone else to do it, so he undressed Fu Shen himself. His white inner robes, soaked with rain, clung to him, revealing the lines of his slender body. Unfortunately, Yan Xiaohan couldn't manage a single romantic thought at this moment. His full attention was fixed on Fu Shen's legs. Layers upon layers of bandages were dyed with blood. It hadn't been obvious underneath the red robes, but the sight of them now was startling. Give me a second. Yan Xiaohan leaned over, picked him up, and carefully bent to set him into the wooden tub. Hot water splashed over the rim and soaked him, but he was heedless of the indignity. "Marquis? Fu Shen!" His fingers accidentally brushed Fu Shen's neck as he drew his hand back. Fu Shen's black hair was draped across his opposite shoulder, revealing a light scar next to the artery on his neck. The location was frighteningly perilous. Had the cut been deeper by even a fraction of an inch, this man would be lying in the grave, not in the bathtub. Yan Xiaohan only now realized how many scars Fu Shen had. Some were old and some were new, but none had been seen by others or recorded in the history books. They were all privately engraved, left behind by years of bloody exertion on the part of this man who had been awarded the title of Marquis so young. He suddenly understood what Fu Shen meant by hard to accept. If he had never trusted the emperor, had never put the word in his heart, why would he have carried heavy armor onto the battlefield again and again? Could the lifeblood of 3 dukes still not be enough to protect a wealthy young master who lived a life of luxury? Yan Xiaohan called a servant in and pointed at the Marquis of Jingning in the bathtub. "Watch him. Don't let him slip into the water." A screen stood in the bathroom, separating it into two spaces. Yansho Han moved to the far side and briskly rinsed himself. He wrung out his long hair with a towel and pinned it up roughly, changed his clothes, and returned to Fushen. The servant had never seen him treat anyone with so much care, and was secretly surprised. The fever burned Fushen's mind into a maelstrom, leaving only a sliver of clarity. He felt like he had dropped from an autumn gale into warm water, so comfortable he was already nodding off. He couldn't have said how long he drifted before someone helped him sit up, and a familiar voice spoke into his ear. "Hold on to my neck." The scent of agarwood wafted through the air, indescribably alluring. Fushen stretched out his arms in a daze. The man holding his shoulders scooped him up, and with a single swelling splash, lifted him out of the water. The moment his body left the warm tub, the chill assaulted him from all directions. Fushen felt thrown back into the desolate palace courtyard of icy wind and rain. He groaned incoherently and struggled to curl himself tighter against the cold. Yan Xiaohan almost fell into the tub, taken off guard by the sudden movement. Before he could get angry, he realized what had happened and quickly shook out a blanket to bundle him up. Now, don't thrash about. Still cold?" Fushen muttered something incoherent, and Yan Xiaohan moved in closer. Silence. Fushen slowly stretched his fingers and toes in the warm blanket, but his brow was still furrowed, as if he was doing his best to endure. Yan Xiaohan attempted to decipher his expression, and asked hesitantly, "Does it hurt somewhere?" Fushen made another indistinct sound. Yan Xiaohan had originally thought to help him put on his clothes, but now he was too scared to move at all, fearing he'd exasperate some hidden injury. At just this moment, a servant came to report that Shen Yitze had arrived. Yan Xiaohan conveyed both Fushen and the blanket to the bedroom. When Shen Yitze saw him carrying a naked figure, loose hair swaying, his eyes nearly popped out of his sockets. This... Stop thising! It's the Marquis of Jingning." Yan Xiaohan laid Fushen gently on his bed. "He knelt in the rain for nearly 2 hours and fainted from fever. Can you help him?" Shen Yitze felt that the Marquis of Jingning had been making awfully frequent appearances lately, but he didn't think further than that. Pressing his fingers to Fushen's pulse, he asked, "What happened? He can't even walk. Why would he go kneeling in the rain? My lord, were you also rained on? Tell them to prepare a bowl of ginger soup." Yan Xiaohan waved off the question, too annoyed to explain the ridiculous situation they'd found themselves in. Shen Yitze was a perceptive man. He asked no more and concentrated on taking the pulse on both of Fushen's wrists. He then lifted the blanket and looked at Fushen's legs. He dashed off 3 prescriptions and sent someone to fetch the medicine while he washed his hands with strong liquor and changed the bandages on Fushen's legs. "He said he was uncomfortable earlier," Yan Xiaohan said with a frown. "Could he have other injuries?" Shen Yitze privately suspected the autumn rain had damaged the great imperial inspector's brain and patiently explained. "Kneeling on hard stone for 2 hours would be unbearable even for someone with knees made of iron, much less a man whose knees are shattered. When soaked in water, these wounds will become red, swollen, and painful. What's more," he said, pointing out the window, "people like the Marquis of Jingning who came back from the battlefield are most sensitive to weather like this. I imagine he has lots of old injuries. I'll be honest, an ordinary man would have been rolling on the ground from this kind of pain." Hang on. He's far from an ordinary man, Yan Xiaohan replied softly. Fu Shen had entered the battlefield with no titles, fought hard for his accomplishments, and guarded the peace on the northern border for years. He dodged countless arrows, but in the end he couldn't avoid a stab to the back. In all truth, when the Yuan-Tai Emperor had proposed that he take command of the Northern Yan cavalry, Yan Xiaohan had indeed been tempted. Although the Feilong Guard was powerful, it was cursed and disdained by the whole court. No matter how close to the Emperor the Imperial Guard might be, it was not a place for great military achievements. Who among the nation's aspiring officers had not dreamed of galloping across the battlefield and crushing the invading enemies with the Northern Yan cavalry like Fu Shen? Who had not thought, what if it was me? Who had not dreamed of realizing their ambitions of the kind of great accomplishments they could achieve? But could one truly secure the position of the commander-in-chief of the Northern Yan army simply through luck? Yan Xiaohan knew very well that he could not replace Fu Shen. There would never be a second Fu Shen in this world. Unfortunately, the Yuan-Tai Emperor did not understand. The Great Wall was never destroyed by foreign enemies. It was first dismantled by their own people until the very bricks and tiles crumbled. My lord, while he was lost in thought, Shen Yitze had swiftly changed Fu Shen's poultice. He stood and said, "Although you may feel this doesn't concern you, I am a physician, so I have a duty to say something. The Marquis of Jingning's injuries will likely leave him with lifelong ailments. He's had 2 fevers in a row, each more dangerous than the last. His body can't withstand any more torment. Although you dislike him, he is still a hero. If you can help him, don't let him struggle alone. At least don't let him kneel in the rain for 2 hours again." Yan Xiaohan's face was expressionless. "I don't recall that you and Fu Shen share any acquaintance. I have never seen you speak up for a patient before." "Allow me to meddle a little in other people's business." Shen Yitze put his tools back in the medicine box and closed it. "You're right. I don't have any relationship with the Marquis. But sometimes I feel that as long as the Marquis of Jingning is alive and well, the capital will be safe. Han people like us don't have to struggle for survival under the iron hooves of the barbarians." Suddenly, Yan Xiaohan remembered that Shen Yitze was born in Xuanfu, right along the Great Wall. The territory had been occupied by the Eastern Tartars and was later recaptured by the Northern Yan cavalry. He stood to see Shen Yitze out. The 2 of them walked silently through the winding corridors. When they reached the main courtyard, Shen Yitze paused. He bowed to Yan Xiaohan and said, "My lord, no need to see me any further than this." "Qizhi," Yan Xiaohan said, his eyes dark. "Fu Shen's injuries. Do you think you could help him stand again?" Shen Yitze smiled bitterly. "My lord, you think too highly of me." "Speak frankly," Yan Xiaohan said. "Don't hold back. I want to hear the truth." Shen Yitze hesitated for a long time. "There is a 10 or 20% chance. Knitting broken bones is simple, but the tendons and nerves were damaged. Half his knee is shattered. He may take up to 5 years to recover, not to mention the money and medicine necessary during that time. The key is to have someone by his side, attentively caring for him. Even so, the effort may not be successful. But a glimmer of hope was always better than none at all." Yan Xiaohan nodded and made a decision. "In that case, starting from tomorrow, you are in charge of the Marquis of Jingning's treatment. Come to my manor to tend to the wounds or administer medicine as necessary." Shen Yitze was astounded. "My lord?" "Don't act so surprised. You'd find out about this sooner or later," Yan Xiaohan said placidly. Just now, His Majesty issued an imperial decree to grant a marriage between the Marquis of Jingning and me. A bolt of lightning seemed to have struck the courtyard. Miracle Dr. Shen stood frozen in place in shock. A moment later, a stunned cry erupted from the Yan manor. Has the Emperor gone insane? End chapter 9.